Good morning, this is Kim Hammer, pastor of Saline Baptist Church in the community of Tull outside of Benton, Arkansas, with your morning devotion taken from the book of Leviticus, chapter 25. We find that there are two key events that are dealt with in the book of Leviticus, chapter 25. One is the Sabbath year, and then the other is the year of Jubilee. And whenever it is that God deals with people, possessions, he always deals with it from a perspective of principle. So God is dealing not only with possessions, he's dealing with people, but he's applying his spiritual principle to the matter so that people will know how to react and how to respond, but also what is expected of them. With regards to the Sabbath year, we find that it's a solution that God has for mankind, that if mankind will follow it, then God will bless them as a result of it. We find that in the Sabbath year, what God expected was for 6 years, they were to sow the crops and they were to harvest the crops. But on the seventh year, they were to let the land lay dormant. This is not really an uncommon practice. In fact, a lot of farmers use this practice in that they rotate their crops to let a field lie barren in an off year so that the land can replenish itself and the nutrients can be put back into the ground. That concept is not new with this generation, but it is found in the principle of the Sabbath year, where God says you need to let the land rest a year. But what's interesting about this is that he said it will still produce enough in order to take care of you, your servants, your hired individuals, your temporary workers, your aliens, your livestock, and your wild animal. Now, some would say, well, how is it that they could lay off given the amount of people that they had to feed and the livestock they had to take care of? Because we know they dealt with a large volume of livestock. When you look at the sacrifices that we've been going through and examining, it required a huge amount of animals in order to sacrifice. How is it that how could they afford to lay off a year when they had such high demands on not only feeding the population but providing the livestock? You find the answer in chapter 25 and verse 20. It says, you may ask, which is the question we asked. You may ask, what will we eat in the seventh year if we do not plant or harvest our crops? I will send you such a blessing in the 6th year that the land will yield enough for 3 years. So they would in the 6th year get a bumper crop. That would cover them for the 7th year that the land was to be laid off. And then that would cover them for the year that it would take to grow a new crop. And by then they'd be into the 3rd year and they would have enough. But what's interesting too is that God said, you'll have enough to eat off the land even if it lays barren, because it will reproduce that which was left over from the year before. One of the things you may remember is the Lord told them, and we looked at this at the last devotion, the Lord told them that when you go in to harvest a crop, you're supposed to leave the border around the edge. And that's where the animals could eat, and that would be where the aliens and the poor people would eat. I grew up on a farm, and anytime you harvest anything, you're going to have a certain amount that's not going to make it into the hopper on the combine. It's going to end up on the ground. And as a result, it will come up wild the next year if you don't do anything at all. We had a good illustration of that in our household this year. Last year, when we got rid of our pumpkins, we took them out to our place in the country, and I threw them out in the backside of the property. And this year, when I went back where I threw the pumpkins out last year, we actually have a pumpkin plant that now has up to 4 pumpkins growing on it. And that's just from one isolated situation. So nature, by God's design, does take care of itself if man will just leave it alone. But what's the real message behind the Sabbath year? The real message is this. God was going to test their faith to see if they had enough faith to trust him, that if he gave them a principle, he would take care of not only their people, but he would take care of their possessions as well. But it would all boil down to their ability to trust God, that when that 7th year rolled around, that they would resist the temptation to go in and to plant that. And that's the way God grows our faith. He tests us. He doesn't ever tempt us, but he does test us and put us in positions where we have to be dependent upon, do we trust God and take him at his word? It goes along with Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 1 says, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. So when it came the 7th year, Hebrews 11:1 was going off in the people's mind as they looked at that field and they thought, do we plant it or do we not plant it? God said, don't plant it. I'll take care of you. And they believed him. And that's part of the application 11:1. Because of their faith, believing that God would take care of them, they didn't do it. And God did take care of them. And God will take care of us if we'll exercise that same kind of faith. When you look at the second subject that's addressed in chapter 25, that's the year of Jubilee. And the year of Jubilee was every 50th year it would reset, is the word I would use. It would reset as far as original possessions, going back to the people that originally owned them when God gave them to them, whenever it was that he established the nation of Israel. They went in the promised land and they were given their inheritance, and everybody got something. Every 50th year it would reset. That didn't only apply to the land, but that also applied to any individual that maybe sold themselves into servanthood, not to slavery, but into servanthood. And so God took care of the people, but he also took care of the possessions every 50th year because it would reset. Now, the value of this is, and if you'll take time to read the chapter, you'll see how it applies to different situations. But the way that it benefited the Israelites was, it created within them the demand to be shrewd in their business dealings. Because you could imagine, if you made a deal in the first year knowing that in the 50th year it was going to reset, you would negotiate a different price. But if you were in the last 5 years, just before the 50th year, you would negotiate a different price. So it instilled in the Jewish people the ability to be savvy when it comes to business, because they had to be able to manage within a 50-year time frame. So there's a practical application to this as well. But again, there's a spiritual application, and that is God wanted to test their faith because they had to be obedient. In fact, if you look at verse 18 of chapter 25, it said, "Follow my decrees and be careful to obey my laws, and you will live safely in the land. Then the land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill and live there in safety." So the year of Jubilee was contingent upon two things that God just identified in these verses. Number one, they had to be willing to follow his laws and follow them to the letter of the law, because that's what God expects. God is not loosey-goosey. God has a set standard. God has a set value system. God has a set accountability system. And God does that because he loves us and he wants us to conform to what is in our best interest as he sees it from his perspective, not from ours. So our job is to follow his decrees that he gives to us, and that applies to us today as Christians. The second thing that the verse said is, be careful to obey my laws. God wants obedience. He wants faith and he wants obedience. And when we are obedient and show faith, God will bless us. He did it for the nation of Israel. In this time of which we're reading, he'll do it for this generation too. But that's a personal commitment that we have to make, that we are going to be committed to obey his word, and we're going to be committed to be able to follow the guidance that he has given us for how to live life. Now, some would say, well, are we supposed to operate on the year of Jubilee today? That was what he gave to them then, and it's what he expected of them. God expects us not to focus so much on the 50th year, but God expects us to focus on what we know we have, and that is today, because we don't have the hope of tomorrow. So let's learn from what God taught the Israelites, apply it to our life today, and let's just wait and sit back and let God bless us. And I hope you have a blessed day.